Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, to vanish into the shadows, to carry her puppies further into the maze of alleys where no one could find them. Yet another instinct, one buried beneath layers of mistrust and terror, whispered differently. Maybe, just maybe, this person could help. The figure stopped a few feet away, voice barely above a whisper, carrying the warmth of careful patience. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The words floated through the cold, soaked air, gentle as a breeze, and she tilted her head, considering. She had heard promises like this before. Every one of them had been broken. Her body stiffened, a low growl rumbling deep in her chest, not aggressive but wary, a warning to any who might step closer without care. The puppies stirred, tiny whines escaping their trembling lips, pulling at her heart with a pain sharper than anything the rain could bring. Minutes passed like hours. Each step she took backward seemed to echo in the puddles beneath her paws. Every drop of rain seemed louder than the last, drumming against the walls, against her fur, against her pounding heart. The human did not advance, did not speak again, did not attempt to touch her. Instead, they knelt on the wet ground, hands resting gently on their knees, waiting. It was the first act of patience she had encountered in so long that it unsettled her. Was this real? Could someone truly wait without force, without demand, without cruelty? The puppies wriggled, one tiny paw brushing against her nose. Her chest tightened with a mother's instinct, a protective force stronger than fear, stronger than memory. She inched forward, her movements cautious, deliberate, each step measured, testing, probing. The human extended a hand, fingers trembling slightly in the cold, but motioning gently, silently inviting trust. She flinched at the gesture, teeth bared for the briefest instant, but then paused, sniffing the air, tasting the absence of malice. In that brief pause, the world held its breath with her. A single shivering paw crossed the wet ground. She froze, every muscle taut. The human did not flinch. The puppies whined, their tiny voices weaving through the rain like fragile threads of hope. She pressed herself lower, nudging them closer, her own fear mirrored in their trembling forms. And then, as though the storm itself had softened, a quiet surrender passed through her. Not complete, not absolute, but enough. She let the hand hover near, enough for the human to glimpse her amber eyes wide, wary, alive. Time fractured and stretched. The sound of her own breathing became a metronome, the only rhythm she trusted. She felt the human's pulse, heard it in their quiet, steady heartbeat beneath the sleeve of wet fabric. She shifted her weight slightly, not toward them, not away, just present. Her puppies stirred again, one crawling forward, the other pushing against her fur, seeking warmth. She lowered her head a fraction, an almost imperceptible gesture that spoke louder than words ever could. She was watching, weighing, deciding, the ultimate act of courage wrapped in instinct, to trust, even just a little, when all else had betrayed her. Rain blurred the edges of the world, transforming the alley into a soft watercolor of gray and silver. Every detail was heightened, the smell of wet earth, the distant bark of a dog, the metallic scent of puddles, the gentle slap of rain against skin and fur. It all pressed in on her senses, demanding awareness, demanding vigilance, demanding survival. And yet, amidst it, there was a fragile thread of something else. Relief, possibility, the faintest brush of hope. Hours could have passed in those first moments, or perhaps only seconds. Time had no meaning in the liminal space between fear and trust. Finally, with a quiet sigh, she inched closer, nudging the first puppy toward the human. The second followed, guided by warmth, by instinct, by the bond only a mother could command. She kept her body low, eyes sharp, yet not aggressive. She was giving them a chance, giving herself a chance, balancing between a world she had known and a world she had yet to understand. And in that pause, that fleeting, suspended moment, the rain no longer felt like punishment but like baptism. Each drop washed a little of the past away, revealing, just beneath the mud and scars, the courage that had kept her alive. Courage not just to survive, but to protect, to endure, to hope. And though she did not yet know it, this night would mark the beginning of a journey that would carry her from fear to trust, from despair to love, from shadows into the soft golden light of a new dawn. The first tentative steps into the unknown were the hardest. She stood at the edge of the puddled alley, fur still wet, scars aching with remembered blows, muscles coiled and ready to flee. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, but the chill clung to her bones, seeping into every joint and tendon. The human crouched on the wet pavement, hand outstretched again, softer this time, carrying something that smelled faintly of warmth and kindness. A piece of cloth, perhaps, or food, she could not tell. The scent was unfamiliar but not threatening, a whisper against the chorus of fear that had filled her life for as long as she could remember. She hesitated, the puppies pressing closer beneath her belly, seeking the fragile security she could no longer guarantee. Her heart thudded, a deafening drum of instinct, protection, and hope intertwined. The human's eyes were gentle, their movements deliberate, their breath fogging faintly in the damp air. "It's okay. You're safe," they murmured, voice steady, patient, carrying a promise that felt almost fragile in its tenderness. She flinched, a low growl escaping her throat, a warning to any who might misinterpret the moment. Not aggression, not yet, only wariness. She had learned to read hands as harbingers of pain, voices as preludes to punishment. But the human did not flinch. Instead, they stayed still, letting the words linger, letting the moment stretch, giving her the space to make a choice she had not known she could. The puppies whimpered again, tiny sounds barely audible over the whispering drizzle. They nudged against her, fragile bodies quivering, seeking warmth and reassurance. She lowered her head slightly, brushing a paw over them in a gesture both protective and hesitant, a silent conversation in the language only mothers understand. They were alive because of her, and she had always known the stakes. Her survival had meant nothing if theirs could not be guaranteed. She inhaled sharply through her wet nose, nostrils flaring, tasting the strange mix of rain, wet earth, and something new. Something untainted by cruelty, curiosity perhaps, or maybe hope. Minutes passed. Each was stretched taut with tension, each drop of rain a reminder of the fragile thread that connected this moment to survival. She took one step forward, then froze, paw sinking slightly into the slick pavement. The human's hand wavered, just a fraction, in perfect sync with her hesitation, as if honoring her fear. Her puppies shifted, one nudging the other toward the edge of the puddle. She let out a soft, almost imperceptible sigh, a mixture of resignation and courage. She was choosing, slowly, tremblingly, to trust. And then it happened. She moved closer, nudging the first puppy toward the human, gauging their reaction with a precision only a mother could manage. The human bent slightly, allowing the small creature to reach the warmth of a gloved hand. And she watched, muscles coiled, heart thundering, as the second puppy followed, crawling and wobbling, fragile and delicate. Their tiny bodies pressed against the human's palm, and something shifted inside her. A tiny, fragile spark of relief that flickered and grew against the storm of memory and pain. The human offered a soft smile, barely noticeable in the dim drizzle. "That's it, good girl," they whispered. The words were gentle, carrying no demand, no expectation, only acknowledgement. She pressed herself low to the ground, ears twitching, tail stiff but no longer rigid, observing. Trust was not given. It was earned in increments, and she had taken the first steps, trembling though they were. Every fiber of her body was alert, every nerve thrumming with the weight of choice. Yet she felt the unmistakable ease of not being hunted. Not yet. They moved slowly, hand hovering, body relaxed but ready to retreat if threatened. The alley had become a theater of patience, where every step, every glance, every breath was an act of negotiation. She was learning tentatively that not all hands brought pain, that not all voices carried anger, that not all humans were cages and chains. The puppies whimpered, brushing against her legs, reminding her of the responsibility she bore, the lives entrusted to her care. She pressed her head close to the first, sniffing and nudging, a quiet reassurance in the drizzle, soaked silence. The human reached for a small blanket, dampened by the rain but soft, and draped it over the puppies. She watched, the tension in her shoulders easing fractionally. They were warm. They were safe, at least for this moment. And as she inhaled the mingling scents of rain, earth, and human, something remarkable happened. She allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible exhale, a release of tension she had carried for too long. The alley, though still gray and cold, did not feel quite so hostile. Her amber eyes flicked up to the human's face, searching, questioning, testing, and in their gaze she glimpsed something she had not allowed herself to hope for: patience, gentleness, understanding. It was unfamiliar, and yet in that unfamiliarity there was comfort. She shifted again, closer this time, letting the human's presence wash over her, cautious but willing. The puppies pressed into her, small bodies like fragile boats seeking anchor, and she felt the pulse of life and warmth, the proof that fear could coexist with trust. Hours seemed to condense into minutes as the first bridge of understanding was built. The drizzle softened to a gentle mist, droplets clinging to fur and coat, each one reflecting the dim streetlight like a tiny, fragile promise. The human offered food, wet and simple, and she sniffed, tasted, and finally ate. Not with abandon, not with ease, but with the measured caution of one testing waters that had been poisoned too many times before. The puppies followed, lapping eagerly, guided by the same instinct that had carried them through their first breaths. She lay beside them, a low rumble vibrating in her chest, not a growl but a murmur of connection. Every movement was careful, deliberate, measured, the balance between survival and trust. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to consider that this world could offer more than fear. That perhaps there were hands that healed, voices that soothed, moments that were not filled with pain. She pressed herself a fraction closer to the human, not yet fully surrendering but acknowledging a fragile thread of safety. Night deepened, the alley glimmering with rain-streaked reflections, the mist curling softly around broken walls and puddled floors. She rose, legs trembling, fur slick and heavy, and circled the human and puppies, a ritual of guardianship and assessment. Every step, every sniff, every flick of the tail was communication, an ongoing conversation in the silent language of trust. The human remained still, patient, allowing her to dictate the pace, allowing her to choose the moments of intimacy. It was exhausting, delicate work, but it was progress. And then as the first hint of dawn touched the horizon with a faint golden glow, she realized something astonishing. She had taken the leap. Tentative, trembling, uncertain, but real. The puppies were safe, warm, and fed. A calm that did not scream with fear or anticipation of punishment, but simply allowed her to exist. The puppies grew rapidly, fragile limbs gaining strength, tiny whines turning into playful yips. Their exploration was cautious at first, hesitant paws against the soft rug, noses brushing the edges of the furniture. She observed, sometimes correcting, sometimes nudging them forward, and slowly she too explored the new boundaries of this strange, kind world. The human would sit nearby, reading, whispering, offering a hand or a smile when she was ready. Bridges of trust were forming, subtle but strong, a gentle tap on the shoulder of a heart long starved for connection. One evening, as the room glowed with the soft gold of the sinking sun, she felt a moment of clarity she had not known in years. The puppies were safe, warm, fed, and loved. She was alive, dry, nourished, and allowed to make her own choices. And she had allowed herself, ever so slightly, to welcome the human into this fragile ecosystem of care. She watched them move among the blankets, her own body still tense but no longer coiled with constant anticipation of pain. She had become part of a rhythm that was not dictated by fear, but by gentle understanding. There were small rituals now that anchored her, moments of subtle intimacy that hinted at real connection. She would nuzzle the human's hand when they approached the blanket, sniffing for reassurance and returning warmth in kind. The puppies responded in kind, crawling toward the gentle touch, pressing tiny bodies into fingers, learning to associate hands with comfort rather than harm. Every interaction, every moment was layered with significance. She measured each movement, each gesture, weighing intention and response. And in the spaces between, trust grew like a fragile bloom, delicate yet resilient. Night fell, and the room was bathed in the soft hum of quiet safety. The human adjusted the blanket, smoothing the edges around the puppies, and she lowered her head to nuzzle the first one, then the second, checking that they were warm, secure, alive. The rain had long since stopped, replaced by a quiet drizzle tapping gently on the roof, a lullaby of rhythm that mirrored her own slow, steadying heartbeat. She lay there, pressed to the floor, eyes half closed, sensing the presence of something she had nearly forgotten: peace. Even as healing progressed, the shadows of her past remained. Sudden noises still made her jump. A raised arm, even in play, could make her flinch. A distant shout reminded her of the cruelty she had endured. Yet with each passing day, those moments became fewer, shorter, less jagged. She began to anticipate warmth instead of pain, gentle hands instead of raised fists, quiet voices instead of shouts. Every soft nuzzle from a puppy, every patient glance from the human reinforced the lesson she had not thought she could learn, that the world could be kind, and trust could be earned. In the quiet hours of night, she would often press her nose into the blankets, feeling the warmth of her puppies against her chest, their tiny bodies curled into hers like fragile pieces of hope. She understood, in a way she had never been able to before, that her survival and theirs were intertwined, and that love, messy, cautious, trembling love, was a force stronger than fear. The human watched from nearby, silently celebrating these victories, understanding that every small step mattered more than any grand gesture. By the time dawn broke, spilling gold and pink across the edges of the room, she had settled into a rhythm that was almost peaceful. Her body still bore the scars of the past. Her mind still carried the memories. But the bonds of trust had begun to knit themselves together like a fragile tapestry. She nuzzled the puppies, sniffed the air for the human's presence, and felt the first flicker of something enduring, a sense of belonging, however tentative, however fragile. The world outside remained unpredictable, uncertain, but in this room, in this moment, she could allow herself to breathe, to rest, to hope. And in that quiet, sunlit room, she realized that trust, once given, could grow. That bonds, fragile though they might begin, could strengthen through patience and unwavering care. That love, even after cruelty, could be nurtured into something tangible, something real, something that survived storms both literal and emotional. And as she drifted into a light, vigilant sleep, puppies curled against her belly, she dreamed not of fear, but of possibility. The delicate promise of a life rewritten, one day at a time. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains, warm but hesitant, as though it too were wary of disturbing the fragile peace that had settled over the small room. She stirred on the edge of the blanket, amber eyes flicking open, ears twitching at the first faint sounds of the day. A distant car horn, the soft hum of appliances, the almost imperceptible scuff of footsteps across the wooden floor. The puppies stirred as well, tiny yips and whines echoing through the quiet, their fragile forms wriggling against her as they sought warmth and comfort. She stretched, limbs stiff, fur still matted in patches, and felt the residual ache of fear coiled in her muscles. It had not disappeared, she knew that, but she had learned something equally important. The world could hold safety, and even in the shadow of memory, one could find courage. Yet safety, she knew now, was a delicate balance, constantly tested. The first trial came subtly, a sudden noise outside the window, a sharp bark from a neighboring dog. Her body stiffened instantly, tail pressing low, muscles coiled for flight. One of the puppies whimpered, a small frightened sound, and she nudged it close, pressing her body around the tiny frame protectively. The human knelt nearby, voice calm, soothing. It's okay, but she did not relax immediately. Trust, she realized, was not a constant state. It was an ongoing negotiation with herself, her instincts, her memories. Every sudden sound, every unexpected movement reminded her of the world she had endured, the cruelty, the chains, the endless nights of fear. Later that day, the trials became more tangible. The youngest puppy, the smaller one, became lethargic, its tiny body trembling not from fear but from weakness. She pressed herself against it, warmth and body weight a shield against an invisible threat. Her heart pounded as she felt the rapid rise and fall of its fragile chest, the faint whine that spoke of pain she could not fix on her own. The human acted quickly, gentle hands lifting the puppy, examining, murmuring reassurance. But even as the human's presence radiated calm, she felt the same surge of helplessness she had experienced during months of neglect. She could protect them, yes, but she could not control everything. That lesson, painful, unavoidable, weighed heavily on her chest, coiling around her like a second heartbeat. Nightfall brought another challenge. The older puppy, emboldened by growing strength, became restless, exploring too close to the edge of the room, pawing at the human's belongings, knocking over a small basket of cloth. She rushed to intercept, low growl resonating through her chest, a mixture of frustration and fear. The human spoke softly, guiding the small creature back, offering gentle correction rather than scolding. She watched, tension coiling and releasing in rapid nervous bursts, learning that mistakes did not always bring punishment, that boundaries could exist without cruelty. Each incident was a lesson for puppies and mother alike, a reminder that the world could still be navigable, even after so many betrayals. Illness, however, proved the cruelest teacher. The smallest puppy's fever worsened, muscles trembling under her careful watch. She pressed against it, whispering silent apologies in the language only mothers speak, frantic for relief that she could not provide alone. The human worked with quiet urgency, administering care, warmth, and medicine, but the room was thick with tension, a tangible force that pressed against her chest and throat. She paced, ears flicking toward every sound, tail stiff but flicking in anxious rhythm. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, to protect through flight, but she stayed, rooted in the helplessness that love sometimes demanded. The act of witnessing pain and offering presence, even when it could not solve everything. The night stretched long, the smallest whimpers punctuating the silent room, each one a pinprick to her heart. She shifted, curling tighter, nudging the puppies, offering warmth, comfort, and quiet presence. The human whispered assurances, soft touches accompanying words, and slowly the fever began to break, the trembling subsiding, the fragile heartbeat stabilizing. She allowed herself the tiniest sigh of relief, muscles relaxing fractionally though vigilance remained. Healing, she understood, was a delicate interplay of courage, care, and endurance, and sometimes even the strongest hearts were tested to breaking. In between these acute crises, moments of emotional challenge arose in subtler forms. A sudden sound from outside, a door slamming, a car backfiring, triggered memories she could not erase. She froze, ears flattened, pupils dilated, body coiled. The puppies scrambled beneath her, tiny bodies pressed into fur, seeking protection. She had to breathe, consciously slowing her own racing heart, listening to the human's calm voice, learning to distinguish present from past. Each time she did, each tiny victory of presence over instinct, the bond grew stronger, but the scars remained, a quiet reminder that trust was not given freely, even in safety. By midweek, growth and tension collided in the most unexpected way. The older puppy, emboldened by play and exploration, darted toward the edge of a slightly elevated floor, slipping for a brief, terrifying moment. She reacted instantly, body crashing down to shield, teeth snapping near but never harming, muscles taut as a spring. The human caught the puppy mid-fall, murmuring reassurance, but she stood, trembling, eyes locked on the tiny creature she had vowed to protect. That near miss left a tremor in her chest, a reminder of fragility, of the constant vigilance that motherhood demanded. Even in safety, danger could arrive unannounced, a test of courage, endurance, and trust. As the days stretched into weeks, the trials became as much emotional as physical, and she watched the puppies gain strength, bounding across the soft carpet, ears flopping, tails wagging, discovering joy in ways she had long forgotten. Her instincts were torn between allowing exploration and guarding against harm. Every playful stumble, every joyful bark, every tentative approach toward the human demanded patience, negotiation, and constant vigilance. It was exhausting, relentless, yet undeniably beautiful, a testament to resilience, to growth, to bonds forged under pressure and maintained through unwavering care. The human, observing quietly, began to notice subtle changes. Her posture relaxed fractionally, the tail no longer tucked at every sudden sound, ears flicking less often at minor noises. Eyes that had once darted constantly now lingered, searching but not panicked, measuring not just threats but the warmth and constancy of those around her. She was healing slowly, and yet every day held the possibility of new trials, sickness, fear, mistakes, missteps, and she met each with a mixture of instinct, learned patience, and cautious hope, navigating the delicate balance between vigilance and surrender. One particularly quiet night, she pressed her head against the human's knee while the puppies slept curled around her belly. The room was silent, save for the gentle hum of distant traffic and the rhythmic breathing of her small family. The human stroked her fur gently, not demanding, not asserting, simply existing as part of this fragile ecosystem of care. She closed her eyes for the first time in weeks, muscles loosening in the presence of something she had once thought impossible: security. Even amid lingering trauma, she understood that endurance, love, and trust could coexist, shaping a new reality out of the fragments of fear and pain. By the time dawn painted the horizon with muted hues of gold and pink, she had survived another night, another series of challenges, another trial of the heart. The puppies stirred, small noises pulling her awake, and she pressed against them, ensuring warmth and safety. The world outside remained unpredictable, but she had learned something invaluable. Even in the face of fear, even under the weight of past cruelty, it was possible to nurture, protect, and love. She had grown stronger, more resilient, more attuned to the fragile balance of life and care. And those scars remained, both visible and hidden. She began to see them not solely as reminders of cruelty, but as markers of endurance, courage, and an unyielding devotion that refused to break. The first light of dawn spilled gently across the horizon, brushing the edges of the room with pale gold and soft pink, painting everything in a quiet, miraculous glow. She stirred on the edge of the blanket, amber eyes catching the subtle brilliance, fur damp from the dew of an early morning that felt almost sacred. The puppies pressed against her belly, tiny bodies warm and alive, breathing steadily, tails flicking in contentment. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to breathe fully, muscles relaxing not in suspicion but in relief. The world beyond the walls remained unpredictable, but within this small room, in this quiet sanctuary, she felt the pulse of life and hope intertwining like a gentle tide. She nudged the first puppy forward, allowing it to stretch its tiny legs and explore the soft carpet. The second followed, stumbling and wobbling, yet growing steadier with every careful step. Her watchful eyes softened as she observed them, discovering the joy of movement, the thrill of safety, the unexpected gift of play. For so long, survival had meant stillness, vigilance, a life spent bracing against cruelty. Now she realized survival had become a canvas for growth, love, and resilience, painted in the delicate strokes of daily care and the gentle persistence of trust. The human moved among them quietly, kneeling beside the blanket, brushing damp strands of fur from her coat, murmuring words that carried no command, only gentle affection. "You've done it. You've kept them safe," they whispered, voice low and full of wonder. She lifted her head slightly, amber eyes meeting theirs, and for the first time allowed the faintest easing of tension across her body. Recognition, understanding, gratitude, these were unfamiliar, fragile, fleeting emotions, yet they flowed through her like sunlight piercing a long winter. She had endured cruelty, neglect, and fear, yet she was here, alive, with her children thriving, and that realization wrapped around her chest with a warmth deeper than any she had known. The morning unfolded slowly, each moment layered with possibility. The puppies chased each other across the soft carpet, tumbling and yipping, their tiny bodies a whirl of energy and life. She pressed herself low, nudging and correcting when necessary, guiding without harshness, guarding without fear. Their laughter, or the closest approximation in high-pitched whines and joyful yips, became a balm to wounds she had carried for too long. Even the humans smiled softly, watching, recording, celebrating these small victories of trust and freedom. Outside, the world awakened in shades of gray and gold. Birds called in the distance, wind rustled through distant trees, and the faint hum of life beyond the walls reminded her that the universe, vast and unpredictable, had room for gentleness and hope. She rose, stretching her weary limbs, muscles taut yet supple, tail brushing the floor with a fluid grace born of regained strength. The puppies scrambled at her feet, yipping for attention, for guidance, for the security she alone could provide. And as she watched them, she realized that the bond they shared, fragile, tested, hard-won, had become unbreakable. The trials, the fear, the near disasters, the quiet, lingering trauma, all of it had shaped her, molded her into a mother capable of both fierce protection and tentative trust. The human approached, kneeling once more, extending a hand without demand. She inhaled the familiar scent, a mixture of warmth, care, and constancy, and pressed her head gently into the palm. The puppies clambered around, curious and trusting, exploring the hands and voices that had once seemed alien. She nudged them, guiding, observing, allowing the smallest gestures of affection to be mirrored and returned. In that quiet moment, she understood the full depth of survival. It was not merely the avoidance of harm, but the active cultivation of life, love, and trust. The day continued, unfolding with a serenity that felt almost surreal after months of chaos and fear. She led the puppies toward the doorway, hesitant at first, ears flicking, muscles coiled in instinctive caution. The human followed, offering encouragement but never forcing, allowing each step, each tentative exploration to be taken on her terms. The sunlight spilled over them, highlighting the sleek curves of her coat, the soft fuzz of the puppy's developing fur, the gentle rise and fall of each chest in synchronized rhythm. This was not merely survival. This was triumph, a reclaiming of life from the shadows that had once consumed them. A soft breeze drifted through the open window, carrying scents of earth, grass, and distant flowers. The puppies leapt and scrambled, chasing the invisible currents, tails wagging, eyes bright with delight. She followed, guiding, guarding, reveling in their unbridled joy, and felt a profound shift in herself. Fear had not vanished entirely. The scars beneath her fur and in her mind would remain, but it no longer dictated her actions. She moved freely, confidently, balancing caution with curiosity, vigilance with openness. She had survived cruelty. Now she could embrace love. The human watched quietly, kneeling at the threshold, observing the family with reverent awe. "You've come so far," they whispered, voice breaking softly. She lifted her head, amber eyes meeting theirs, and in that gaze, a conversation unfolded without words. Gratitude, recognition, shared relief. They had guided her, nurtured her, and in return, she had entrusted them with the most precious gifts she possessed: her children, her trust, her heart. The puppies yipped again, tumbling, slipping, exploring, and she pressed herself closer, but not in fear. In protection, yes, but also in joy, pride, and deep, enduring love. As the sun climbed higher, bathing the room in warmth and clarity, she realized that every trial, every shiver of fear, every sleepless night had been a step toward this moment. The alley, the chains, the raised hands, the nights of hunger and isolation, all of it had tested her, honed her instincts, and strengthened her love. And now, here, in a room suffused with sunlight and soft voices, with puppies thriving under her care and humans honoring her trust, she understood the full magnitude of resilience. Evening approached, golden light fading into soft amber. She lay on the floor, puppies curled against her belly, a living blanket of warmth and life. The human knelt nearby, brushing a hand through her fur with the gentlest touch, whispering praises she barely needed to hear. She closed her eyes, muscles loosening completely, a sigh escaping her lips, a sigh of relief, release, and quiet triumph. The world could be cruel, yes, but it could also be tender. Love could flourish where fear once reigned. Trust once given cautiously could grow into something enduring. And she, battered yet unbroken, weary yet victorious, understood that freedom was not just the absence of chains, but the presence of connection, care, and unyielding love. Night fell, wrapping the room in quiet darkness, yet it was not oppressive. The puppies slept in gentle rhythm, bodies pressed against hers, and she listened to the human's soft breathing nearby. For the first time in a lifetime, she allowed herself to drift fully into rest, unguarded, unafraid. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, the world turning slowly, endlessly. But inside this small sanctuary, life had been reclaimed, rewritten, and redeemed. She dreamed of running through open fields, of warmth without fear, of laughter mirrored in her puppy's yips, and in that dream, she knew the dawn of freedom had truly arrived.